just in case, I've come prepared. It is Friday the 13th today. Hello guys, and welcome to this Volks Wizard video, which is actually episode 2 of Project Audi 80. Now before we start this one, I'd like to say big thanks to everybody who's watched, liked and particularly commented on episode 1 that went live about a month ago. It's had nearly 39,000 views in that time, which is incredible. It's similar to the number of copies a good car magazine will sell over a month. So that's pretty mind-blowing for this humble channel. It does mean this car will be around for quite a long time yet then, so probably about 1 episode a month I think we're going to be doing. It needs to be ready for Stamford Hall, the car, which is the beginning of May, so there's a fair bit to do. I might even take it abroad in the summer, so it'll be around for a bit longer and it will be for sale at the end of that, but I don't know when that will be. Now you may have noticed things do not look too different down here, and this has come about because a few of you very rightly commented I should have drained the fuel in episode 1 because it looked contaminated, and that's what I've been doing today, and I'll show you how I've done it, because it's not a particularly easy thing to do really. But I remembered from the days when I used to muck around with Mark II Golfs, if you took the fuel pump relay out, that's a famous rattly one, and put a 53 relay in, which is a really common relay, you can run the fuel pump all the time the ignition's on without the engine running, and that's ideal for draining the tank. You can just pull the hose off the injector unit and stick it in a can and fill that up, and that's what I've done today, and it's looking pretty good. Down here, not an overpowering smell of petrol today because it's all gone. I'm not sure you can see down there, hopefully you can, but my torch is illuminating the pretty empty tank, and you can see the module there where the swirl pot sits, the sort of creamy thing. There's a bit of staining in there which I'm going to clean off in a sec, but it's free of debris now. But what I think was bits of rubber from the old hose, you can see the new one there, had gone in there and they just melt and they don't sort of completely vanish, they just become a horrible little sludge. So yeah, once we've got that done, put some good fuel in, I can't see any reason why it won't drive perfectly, but we'll find out in this video later on. What we'll also do is give you a good tour, because this car is far from perfect. It's done a genuine 5,063 miles, which is not a lot for its 28 years on the planet, but a car standing isn't necessarily good for it, so I will reveal all later. So without any further ado, I'll get this put back together and I'll see you in a bit for a drive around the block again, hopefully with no problems this time. Okay guys, it's actually about 3 weeks after that clip was filmed, and there's been a lot of water under the bridge with this car in the meantime. Now on that day, I was hoping the car would be running perfectly by the end of it. I'd drain the tank, vacuum out the debris, put some more fuel in, and we'd be good to go. But that's not how it worked out. It was actually exactly the same after all that work, which was a bit disheartening. So I thought, well, let's have a look at the fuel filter. It might look new externally, but there's been a lot of debris in the tank and it could quite easily block up. So I took the old one off. A lot of nasty brown stuff came out of it. But the car actually ran worse with the new fuel filter, which was really annoying. So next up, I had to really make sure the fuel pump was pumping enough fuel to the throttle body. It checked out okay, actually. In the meantime, I realised the fuel gauge sender unit was defective. So that hasn't come from Germany yet. Again, it's not something you can just buy very quickly, so that's probably due next week, but we can live without that as long as I've always got a can of fuel in the car. If it runs out, I'll just put some in. So next, the focus of attention was the throttle body. Now this car is single point injection. It's not like a normal fuel injection car. It's more like a carburettor, a clever modernised carburettor. So you probably know what a throttle body looks like. It's got a motorised flap there that controls the idle, and you can, with a cable throttle, you can, when you rev it, you open that flap. I can't do it with one hand. But generally the fuel injectors are on the inlet manifold and they don't inject at this point. But with this method, that goes on there, somewhere like that, and the injector pumps fuel onto the throttle flap. It's very basic. It's not the cleverest injection system, but it's so much better than carburettor. So you have the fuel going in there, and then that's the fuel pressure regulator, and then so this is really just full of fuel, and the injector picks what it wants and sprays it into the engine. What's left goes back to the tank. So one test I did was to disconnect the return line on the car and rev the engine. You can kind of do that really easily with this bit, like that. And I noticed that the return amount of fuel was actually no different when you revved the engine, which was very weird, because you can imagine there's got to be more fuel going into the engine if you rev it, but it didn't appear to change. So that told me that quite possibly the injector was blocked, and if you think about it, with all that debris in the tank, it would make a lot of sense. You could see it spraying a bit, but it wasn't spraying enough for the car to drive properly. So got onto eBay, and I was looking for injectors brand new really, because I was pretty convinced, but then this complete throttle body came up for 45 quid with no guarantee because the seller couldn't test it. I thought, what have I got to lose really? And it arrived yesterday, and I came back to work at 5:30 in the evening to fit it because I was so excited. And the good news is, swapping the injector over, this is my old injector, did the trick. The car drives absolutely superbly. Now I had a quick run around the block, and it's like night and day. That that feeling you got when you know you cracked it? That's what I got. So we'll go for a bit of a drive in a bit, but I think it's long overdue that you should have a tour of this car, warts and all. So without any further ado, I'm going to get this car outside and give you a good look around it. Okay, well, here she is in the daylight. So let me give you a quick recap before we have a walk around. She's a 1992 Audi 82 litre, 90 horsepower petrol. That's a B4 generation car, so basically the last 80 before the A4 came out on a B5 platform in 94. Not a particularly remarkable car, apart from when it comes to the mileage. She's done just over 5,000 miles in her 28 years. The episode 1 video has helped me find out a bit more about the car's history, because I didn't really know much about it from the day it was sold by Hartwell Smithfield until Audi UK acquired it. But it turns out it was bought by a man for his wife. They split up when the car was 6 months old. It was left unused for many, many years. It was then acquired by a guy who runs, I think, the Classic Audi forum. He's based in Shropshire. If you're watching this, please do get in touch. And he sold it to Audi UK. It was actually driving okay when Audi UK had it. I didn't realise that actually when I made the episode 1 video, but if you look at the history, they did notch up a few miles while they had it, which means it must have been running much better than it was when they sold it. And they bought it as a job lot, and I bought it from them. You know that from episode 1. Right, let's have a look around it. It's not perfect. Now, car standing, as you can see by the way it ran, or didn't run, it's not necessarily good for them. You can store cars well, but this car was left probably for a bit too long. Okay, bodywork is generally really good, and it is actually, I think, possibly all original. There are a couple of dents that a dent man will sort out. Actually, another one there. It's got some budget tyres on it, but it's better than having the originals, because you can imagine at 5,000 miles it'd have lots of tread, but it would all be cracked and perished. There's a bit of delamination to the windscreen. That's a bit of history there. So possibly the last time it was taxed, and that was in Wales, interestingly. Not a million miles away from where the Classic Audi forum guy lived, but I don't think he had it in 94. It's got etched windows there. It's even got an alarm apparently, though I haven't come across it. It's missing the Audi badge off the wheel trim. It's got mud flaps. I'll put on screen now what it looks like underneath as well, because I've put it on the ramp and I was really, really impressed. That's when I was doing the fuel filter. Let's have a look inside then. So excuse it, I haven't valeted or anything. It's been a work in progress, and it will get a good clean up, but you know, I just wanted to make this video today because it's long overdue. So it's a Procon 10 car, which means there are cables, I can't really show you them, that do something to the steering column if you have an accident. So not long after this, they went to airbag and got rid of Procon 10. We've got some gauges, although I'm not sure they work at all, so that's another thing for me to have a look at. A key card for your stereo to deter thieves. Shut that door. Audi 80 logo there. We've got a handbook, but probably with not an awful lot of any use in it. Canberra, yep, that's the one. Cool. Interesting. Looks like Alcantara, this headliner, but it's actually, oh, it's really weird. Looks like it's padded. It looks more like plastic than fabric, but it's quite nice. So no air conditioning, just got manual knobs. This is what you got back in the day, even in a pretty prestigious car like this. 5069 on the clock, and she revs. Wow, look at that, electric mirrors, blimey. Mind you, Polos about this time, we're guessing these are standard as well, probably from 94, so it's no big deal. Now let me show you the bad bits, and let this be a lesson to you if you leave cars standing for any length of time. I don't know about this, but I'll probably remove it. It's some sort of compass. And look at those pedals, they're all still really unworn. No point showing you under the bonnet because you've seen enough of that, I think. Right, so this is the car's downfall, really. So we have corrosion in this area, which is very unusual for one of these because they are galvanised, but I have a theory as to why that's happened. So my theory is that the car was parked under a tree and bits of the sycamore tree accumulated down here, and when they decompose they might do some sort of chemical reaction, but just holding the water wouldn't be very good. If you shut the boot, you can see, you can imagine them getting in there. And bear in mind, this would have been sat for years, so they would have got in there, down there as well. Although that side's escaped it, but it just depends where the tree was in relation to the car. The reason I think that is because when I started working on the fuel tank, I actually had to vacuum tree debris away from the hatch in the base of the tank. So down there, I don't know if you can see it in this light, but all around the tank cap, it was absolutely loaded with the wingy bits off sycamore trees. So I don't know how they got there because it should be under the cap, but yeah, it's definitely been stood around, and that would make an awful lot of sense. Now it's only cosmetic, so this can get tidied up very easily and the car will be pretty good. The front end hasn't suffered like that, and actually when you look at it on a ramp, it's lovely underneath, so all this bit is good. There's a tiny bit of corrosion down there, but nothing major at all. Okay, let's go for a drive now, and fingers crossed it's still working as well as it did last night. Okay, here we are again then. So I'm feeling a bit more confident this time. The first test drive in episode 1, the car was definitely better, but it wasn't perfect. Now I'm hoping it will be perfect. Just in case, I've come prepared. It is Friday the 13th today. Okay, now we're actually going to go left to the tricky junction. It's sort of Friday afternoon rush hour, so it's quite busy, but I'm quietly confident. Famous last words. Okay. My dream is to drive this car home. I live 25 miles away. Wouldn't necessarily go on the motorway, but we've got a bit of confidence building to do in the meantime. God, the indicator relay is really quite loud. Okay. It doesn't seem to switch off either, which is a bit annoying. Okay, so second gear, really low revs, and it was lovely. What am I going to do to occupy my time now? This is fixed. It's been such a... I don't know, when I haven't been working on it, I've been thinking about it as well. So, mind you, there are plenty of other projects in the offing. So I've got the TT Quattro Sport. I think I'll just have to do that and sell it because I just don't have the time to record it. The Lupo GTI is actually in the body shop right now. Is there another one? There's my sister's boyfriend's Golf 4 estate, done 217,000 miles, and needs an injector. It's a diesel. That's got potential there. And there are some other cars as well, but I'm not sure what I'm going to do with them as yet. So, we're just driving like a normal car. In fact, I'm even speeding a bit. I'm getting so excited, which is obviously not very good. Just adjust the backrest. Now I'm not tense with fear. Okay, well, let's keep going. I reckon if we get to the end of this road, we'd have broken this car's mileage maximum over the last few years. I do need to get the fuel gauge fixed though, because now it's telling me it's empty because there is no sender in the tank. So I don't really want to put too much fuel in until that's fixed, because even though it's really just quite easy to clip it in, it's obviously better to do that without getting soaked with fuel. Onto the brakes, nearly up to temperature now. And I'm in third gear doing about 25, and it pulls sweetly. I didn't drive these much back in the day. I drove a diesel one for a bit. I drove quite a few Golf drivers which were the same single point injection, and I actually preferred those to the Mark III Golf GTI because they were, unlike this car, they were 1.8 and they revved out a bit nicer. But this 2 litre, it's not bad, you know. So yeah, I think that's quite a good test drive done then. So no sort of coughing or spluttering. Put it into fourth gear at low revs now, and it's perky. The next job is to get the MOT done, because that's due very shortly. I don't know how well it'll do. I mean, the fact it runs now is probably quite good, so it probably goes through the emissions side okay. But there are plenty of other things on a 28-year-old car that's been stood for longer than it should have been. Okay guys, well, I hope you've enjoyed episode 2 of Project Audi 80. I sincerely hope episode 3 won't be over a month away like this one was. So please subscribe if you've enjoyed it, click the notification icon and give it a thumbs up if you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you for the next one, hopefully very soon.